Joe, I think folks are really going to love our next segment.
Everybody likes to talk about the headlines and the hot topics of the day. That's right up our alley.
It is, and I also know that there are times when news reporters wish they had just a little bit more time to cover a story.
So this is your chance to learn a little bit more about the stories beyond just the sound bites.
So let's talk hot topics.
The Jackson County Commissioners and Administrator recently presented a close-up look at the county to the Southern Oregon business community gathered at the July Medford-Jackson County Chamber Forum. Here are the highlights.
I'm happy to be here again today before the Chamber. Want to thank you all for the opportunity to have myself and our staff who work for all of you, along with our Board of Commissioners, here to present on behalf of the county. I've spoken before the Chamber in the 10 years that I've been the county administrator here. We've built $200 million plus in capital projects without coming to the taxpayers and asking them to pay for any of it. We did it within our property tax base, and we did it within our own fund balances and reserves, which is fairly significant. You know, I didn't want to come today and talk about marijuana, but it's hard to not talk about it because everyone in the county is talking about it. It's been a huge impact to what the county's business has been the last year. Last year, I took a flight over the county, and I took a videographer up, and we shot all across the county these marijuana grows, and it's prolific. I mean, the landscape of our county has changed hugely. We were flying at 1,500 feet up, and you could smell marijuana 1,500 feet in the air. So it tells you that people that live, by marijuana really are impacted by smell, and you can be 1,500 feet up in the air and still smell the marijuana as you're flying over the marijuana grows. This year it's even worse. I mean, I can tell you that the planning's just getting started. It's more expanding out in the county. We've had a lot of disputes since our board has passed our marijuana ordinance. And our ordinance was appealed to LUBA. It was also appealed to the Court of Appeals, and our ordinance was upheld. One of the big things that people complain about in our ordinance is that our ordinance prohibited the growing of marijuana on rural use. Rural use is what a lot of people anticipated they would be able to grow marijuana on, went out and bought a lot of properties with the expectation they would be able to do it. In fact, our Board of Commissioners had intended to allow it to be grown on rural use as they were drafting the ordinance. And then just prior to the board passing the ordinance, the Oregon legislature passed a law that said that growing marijuana was considered a farm use. In our county's land development ordinance, a farm use is only allowed on resource lands, so any resource land. So EFU and also woodland reserve, open space reserve. There's some cases where it's allowed in industrial lands, but it's limited. Rural use and rural residential are not considered resource lands. So our ordinance prohibited the growing of marijuana on those lands for that reason. Before I move on to the next bullet point, I do want to tell you that LUBA upheld our ordinance, but they did rule that based on our ordinance prior to the adoption of the marijuana ordinance, that people may have a right to a pre-existing non-conforming use to continue to grow marijuana on rural residential if they can prove that they were doing it and to what level prior to the board passing an ordinance. So we've had people come in and make application to grow marijuana on rural residential land that may qualify for a pre-existing non-conforming use. Speaking of marijuana, going right to a new job. We're cooking now. Now, I didn't mean to tie those two things together because it's legal. But this is another big issue. We've had a lot of people come before our Board of Commissioners and ask why we don't have jail space. Why don't we just, buy these dilapidated buildings downtown? In fact, why don't we buy the Lithia buildings and just put cots up in there and put people in jail in those buildings? And I'll tell you that you heard the introduction. I worked in corrections for a long time. I was fortunate enough to be part of building 2 new jail projects and 3 transition center projects in my career. Building a jail is expensive, really expensive. The last jail that was built by a county was in 2004 in Multnomah County. It was called Wapato. And it was a 525 bed jail, and it cost $58 million to build. And that was in 2004, okay? So in 2004, when I came to the county, we sent a team to the National Institute of Corrections to look at what the county needed for jail space and to begin the discussion about building a new jail. And we were told we needed to build a jail that would be 600 or 650 beds just to meet the standard for the sentencing of the people we had in jail now. My guess is that's probably closer to 700 or 750 now. As a criminal justice system grows, as the city of Medford and the city of Central Point and Ashland add police officers, guess what? More people get arrested. There's more crimes fed into the system, and the district attorney's office has to go file more cases. And so as that system grows and the jail just stays stagnant, we get more and more overcrowding. A couple of things that I want to tell you is that a lot of people don't know this. In 1995, the Oregon legislature passed a bill called the Community Corrections Partnership Act, and it's referred to as Senate Bill 1145. What that did is it took anyone who was sentenced to a year or less and removed them from state prison custody and left them locally in the counties. And it gave the counties some funding to deal with those people locally, but people were no longer sentenced to jail. So in the state of Oregon, people don't get sentenced to jail. If they get sentenced to 30 days, they don't get sentenced to 30 days jail. Most people don't know this. They get sentenced to 30 days in the custody of the local supervisory authority. In our county, the local supervisory authority is actually the community justice director. So those people get sentenced to that person's custody. They may start serving their sentence in jail because that's where they were when they got convicted, but they can be moved to any alternative custody to serve their sentence. And the idea is to pick the least costly form of custody that will gain compliance. Not every person needs to be in jail. What we've done in our county is build capacity in all those other systems, and we've tried to maximize the use of those systems because they're much less expensive. You can put someone on house arrest for $15 a day. You can put them in jail for $100 a day. Where do you want to spend the money? And so we've built huge capacity outside of the jail system, and we do deal with a lot of people outside of the jail system. So we've focused all of our efforts to make sure when we're talking about a new jail, we can tell people, look, we spent money in the least expensive way, every way we could, and we still have this issue. And we do have an issue. I mean, you read it every day. Someone gets arrested and they're out the door before the police officer that brought them is out the sally port. And it's very frustrating to police officers to have to do that. I'll tell you, the last time I looked at this, and it's been several years, and this will shock you, we had 11,000 outstanding warrants for people in our county. The reason why I'm telling you that is it's virtually impossible to build a jail that's big enough to hold everybody that should be in jail, unless you don't want to spend money on anything else. Point being is we could build a 750-bed jail or a 1,000-bed jail, but I want everyone to know that, and no falseness in this, we're still going to have overcrowding and we're still going to have releases. You can't lock all 11,000 people up. I will tell you, just opening back up the 62 beds, let the system breathe a little bit. And it will be helpful if we ever get to the point of being able to build a new jail. This is not a project we'll take on this year or the year after or the year after. This is a multi-year project that takes a lot of education and a lot of understanding. My guess is a new jail, probably built at 1,000 beds and operating at 750 beds, would be somewhere between $80 and $100 million to build. And that isn't what scares me. What scares me is the operating costs of it. I mean, we'll see $10 million more a year in operating costs, if we triple or quadruple the size. And, over the life of a bond, 20 years, $10 million a year in operating costs is way more than it costs to build the jail. So there's a lot to talk about with that.
And thank you to the Medford-Jackson County Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. Thank you to everybody who came today, took the time out of your day to hear about a little what we're doing down at the county. It's just a small taste, a little everything, as you're probably aware. And especially thank you to all of our staff, department heads, committee members, everybody who helps us do our job and make us better commissioners. Couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much.